Exactly.
And then he's like,
sometimes you do just get checkmated. Huh?
dude,
Uh,
we gotta talk about
je
it.
suis très confusé.
We gotta talk about it.
That's probably not even right.
Controllers.
I am very confused.
Let me just say that I feel vindicated. I feel vindicated that I, once upon a time, I was approached in Summit 13 where these controller mods was like, hey, do you want a phob? And I thought about it. They're offering it for free. And I was like, no, I don't want a phob. Because I learned my lesson from the Goon Wave, where I was on the Goon Wave train. It was advertised as the last perfect controller that you'll ever need. Not cheating. Had no macros. And I was like, all right, sure. And I was loving the Goon Wave. It was like the best controller I ever had. The pivots were perfect. It felt great. The problem with the Goon Wave was that mine died in like 2 weeks. And it actually exploded during Smash World Tour. Like, it literally couldn't up B out shield. Like, I had a Samus main. I had weapons test after the tournament to up B out shield my controller. It literally did not work. If a Samus main can't up B out shield, you know the controller is fucked up. And like, it just wasn't registering pivots anymore. It was like missing inputs. It literally exploded. And I had a little bit of a meltdown. I considered quitting Melee. I got scammed by the scam wave. And then I just kind of like made a vow to myself that like I'm never relying on these experimental controllers again. Like these controller mods where they the problem of that with those products that the community is making, like, you know, the Goon Waves, the Phobs, is that it's not tested. It's not like widely tested across the whole field for several months, if not years. Like, cause that's my big problem with the Phob, was like I thought about it, like their whole premise was like, oh yeah, it's supposed to be consistent. I'm like, okay, that's good. I'll get it if there's no complaints in 6 months, because that's like my new rule with these controllers, is that they need to be tested for at least 6 months publicly for me to accept that, like, oh, okay, there's not gonna be any risk now, is there? Because like, yeah, on paper, I would love a like a consistent controller that lasts forever, right? But the thing is that you have these modders that are like, hey, yeah, I have the updated patch, you know, mine's perfect, mine will never ever break. But it's like, human error exists for a reason. There's like, it's not that, you know, there's this sample size of you can't have a sample size be 1 and say that yours is perfect, you know? Like, you gotta test across like thousands of controllers over like preferably a year's time to span. Literally, when I rejected that controller offer, uh where I was like, I'll wait 6 months and I'll see. Literally, Leffen was complaining about how his fob was breaking. I've heard so much complaints about fobs privately amongst a lot of top players, where just the fobs were breaking and they just didn't have the right perfect settings. They didn't have like update 1.34, and like, you know, if they just simply did this and that, it will never break. And then like there'd just be new problems all the time. And I'm like, yeah, this is why I didn't invest in the fob, huh? That's why that's why I don't want this. And ever since the Smash World Tour incident, I just decided to stick with a good old OEM. Even though they're not perfect, they don't explode. They only get shittier over time rather than instantly, like Phobs and Goomways are prone to do. I make sure to also have a backup at all times. So just in case my controller for some reason explodes or just doesn't feel right or the pivots finally wear off, I got a backup one, an exact replica, that just to make sure that I'm not caught with my pants down this time around. And I honestly recommend just about every other top player to do the same. Just like,
is he VOD reviewing right now?
yeah. Thanks, Yams, for 28 months. But yeah, I pretty much recommend every other top player to do the same. Is just have a backup at the very least, where it's like the exact settings. It's the freshest one that you could find. You see this. This is so bad. This is so bad. If I was in Jmook spot, by the way, I'd just DQ. I already know what's gonna happen. I'd rather preserve my dignity than to just get destroyed, get ass blasted. I would have DQ'd in this spot because like you just know what's gonna happen. Like you're just gonna get brutally 3-0'd at someone else's controller. Which, by the way, controllers are so delicate. I can't handle using someone else's controller and seriously try because like for me I use trigger plugs for my L and R shield buttons, and like just every controller is so unique just by its very minute feel that like there's no way I could adjust to someone else's controller and try to beat one of the best players in the world to ever touch the controller. Like I'm not doing that. I would have DQ'd. Jmook is a way bigger man than I am. I just recommend every top player. One, I think they should just have a backup OEM. Just so that they just know they have one that's like not gonna die. That one that's just ready. It's not gonna insta die. If it's gonna be a phob or a goon wave, at least have like a fresh one that's like the exact same settings, the most updated firmware if you can. Because that's what I do. I ever since I just switched back to OEM with my beautiful KoDoRiN controller. Thank you, KoDoRiN, for making my controllers. I bring my backup just in case. But honestly, I've only had to switch controllers like one time since the Smash World Tour incident, like roughly 2 years ago at this point. 1.5 more like. And I only had to switch controllers one time. And during the transition, I just used my backup controller, which felt great. I have a backup controller now, and feels fine to me. I make sure to play on my backup every now and then, just to like be warm up both of them, get used to like the little differences. So just in case I have to, it's fine. And anytime my main controller breaks for whatever reason, my backup's here. My backup's fine, and I'm just gonna order a new one from KoDoRiN / replace the pots if it's like a pot issue. So it's like I understand it's hard to get controllers, especially for Spaceys apparently. Still though, it's like you really can't get two, Like it did take me like a couple months, like not a couple months. For me to get 2 controllers for KoDoRiN, it did take me like roughly 2 months to get it. But it's like you should be using, by the time you get your main controller, you should also be spending time getting your backup controller too. And I know it's hard. It's not gonna be perfect, but it's better than like this situation where you're using HBox's phob. It's like you should, if you don't have a backup, you need to be spending your time right now to find a backup one. And it's tough. It sucks that we're in this position, but that's just how it is. Is that like I just don't think it's a good idea to rely on experimental controllers that haven't been play tested properly in the span of several months. Literally, we just like I would not ever trust a phob in 2023 right now with this incident that resulted in the shitty grand finals, Again, my personal rule of thumb is if there's no major incidents for 6 months, I'll give it a legitimate shot. But this happened, the 6-month timer kind of resetted for me. I'm not using a phob anytime soon because they don't look stable to me. And before you say, oh, just use patch 2.16, it's like, okay. And then what if patch 2.16 also has other problems that we don't expect? Because that will happen. People thought the same thing about patch 1.2. And there's problems. There's going to be new problems. And that's why I'm willing to give patch 2.0 a shot when it's been 6 months. Otherwise, no. I think that's just ridiculous to try to rely your livelihood on what's essentially a gamble. Like, because in theory, like, phobs are supposed to be consistent and perfect, right? But it's like, I don't, with how much I've seen this happen, with my own personal experiences, with my Goon Wave exploding, I don't think it's a good idea to trust these controllers in the big stage. I don't think OEMs are perfect for what it's worth, but at least it doesn't instantly explode. And I'd rather just I'd rather play the game without worrying that it will instantly explode. And you know, one day down the road, it's possible that the Phobs will finally be adjusted to what it is. But until I hear Leffen finally solve his controller crisis, I'm not trusting it either. That's my spiel on the whole controller issues because, dude, it's such a shame that we were essentially robbed this grand. We were robbed. And like I think it's something that's applicable to other players as well. Like I think if you are a lower level player, just stick with a fucking OEM. You don't need a fob. like you don't need all these fancy schmancy settings with the fob. You're losing because you suck, not because of a controller setting that is gonna guarantee you these wins. Like, come on, man. Just rely on a good old controller. You don't need if you're a lower level player, you're not losing because of not properly adjusting your fob settings. You're losing because you suck at the game. You should probably stick with an OEM, in my honest to God opinion. And it's unrealistic too. Like, I would never recommend, like, you know, you would never recommend a rookie tennis player to buy like the top of the line world rackets, right? Because like they're not gonna use it right. They're not gonna use all of it. It's much better to just recommend them like a basic bitch racket, but it'll do its job. It's fine. And when you get better, like top 100 level, maybe you need some upgrades. But you know, if you're like not even close to top 100, like you're fine with a regular controller. Like it's impractical for lower level players to get backups. But also, I just think they don't need the fanciest controllers to begin with. Yeah, exactly. If you have a controller with no snapback, you're fine. you're definitely fine. So just find a GameCube controller. You'll probably find one in eBay or Amazon. I don't know if Amazon still sells them anymore, but still, like, you could definitely find some on eBay. Word of mouth. All that. And Nintendo, they're gonna sell some more GameCube controllers. When they re-release Smash Ultimate Definitive Edition for the Switch 2, there's gonna be more controllers that they're gonna make. They're not gonna ignore free money, so there's gonna be more OEMs. Just trust me on this one. Right. Which, by the way, my read is that whenever Nintendo releases their new console, they're just gonna basically make Ultimate Definitive Edition. I don't know how the fuck they're supposed to make a sequel to Ultimate. It just feels like they're just gonna make a port of Ultimate with like all the DLC characters. That's my read. I think they're done with sequels. It's like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, where it's like, why release a sequel for Mario Kart when Mario Kart 8 Deluxe already has everything? I think they're gonna do the same thing for Ult. What does OEM stand for? That's actually... It's like a test between the nerds and the not nerds. Because I actually know what GoLint stands for. I don't really know what OEM stands for. I'm gonna guess that it stands for like original... original equipment motherboard. Original electronics manufacturer. I was close enough. Also, one thing I could have suggested is box, but I don't want to encourage cheating in my platform. So, also, it's pretty likely that at some point it's going to get nerfed. It might not be next year, but it'll probably get nerfed soon.